It's late April. The dandelions are in full flower on my back patio. Just exactly what a hungry small tortoiseshell butterfly needs. After all, it's just spent 6 months without a meal during its long winter hibernation. Stoking up with nectar gives it the energy it needs to carry out its primary task, laying its eggs on the nearby nettles. Some butterflies deposit their eggs singly, but a small tortoiseshell lays them in a large batch. This usually contains between 50 and about 80 eggs. These are laid on the underside of a nettle leaf, normally on the young, fresh springtime growth. The interval between each egg appearing is usually about 30 seconds. After dedicating more than half an hour to her task, finally she was done, and she flew off. The newly laid eggs are pale greenish, but they gradually darken as the tiny caterpillar inside begins to develop. When newly emerged, the caterpillars aren't much thicker than a cotton thread. For the next couple of weeks, until they're nearly fully grown, they'll live and feed together en masse. At this stage, with their tiny weak mouthparts, they can only tackle the very young, immature nettle leaves right at the top of the plant, in active growth. But now, even at this early stage, they're about to face one of many dangers to come. A small parasitic wasp is beginning to take a menacing degree of interest in the tiny caterpillars. In response to its presence, they begin defensively jerking their bodies. But their attacker is undeterred. She has a job to do. Threading her flexible abdomen forwards through her legs, she prods an egg into the soft body of a caterpillar. Mission accomplished. That single egg, so rapidly deposited by the wasp, will eventually give rise to numerous larvae. These busily feed within the body of the caterpillar as it continues to feed and grow, without any sign of what is happening within. We now jump forward a few days. By now, the caterpillars have all undergone a mass molt of their skins. They're now noticeably larger and pricklier. They're on a silken pad that they themselves have made. There's been another change. They're now big enough to tackle much larger and tougher nettle leaves. But massed together like this, they make rather a sitting target for some of the local spiders. This female Pizura mirabilis spent much of the day picking them off one at a time. Eventually, she became so full that she just couldn't manage any more. And so she just settled down on her food supply until it was required again. Like any good caterpillars, they calmly devote most of their time to feeding. But this group is anything but calm. In mass panic, they're vigorously jerking their bodies. And here's the reason for their conspicuous agitation: a marauding female parasitic fly. Unlike the wasp seen earlier, she actually needs to land directly on a caterpillar's body in order to lay an egg. But as we'll see, that's more easily said than done. Unlike before, these caterpillars are now much larger and quite dangerously spiny. A few days later, and they're beginning to get really large. Even the spiders are now unwilling to tackle them. But despite the increased risks, the parasitic flies are still determined to press home their attack. Now it's quite noticeable that they're even more wary than they were before. The caterpillars seemed able to distinguish this fly from any others and only jerk their bodies in response to it. With this harmless flesh fly, they scarcely respond at all, even when touched. A speckled wood butterfly elicits no response at all. The parasitic flies seem to recognise that their best chance of making a hit will be to find a single caterpillar by itself. But they're still really wary of that spiny head jerking back forcibly onto their own body. In the end, she judges it simply too risky, and she gives up and tries elsewhere. But even that fails, the caterpillar just falls off. Just look at how spiny the caterpillars have now become. No wonder that fly is forced to be so cautious. Once fully fed, the caterpillars pupate out of sight among a jumble of nettles. Then, in late June or early July, the adults start to emerge. But these now have to face a new suite of dangers. Even a simple garden flower can be a risky place. This female common flower spider, lurking in ambush, is almost impossible for any feeding butterfly to spot. Not all the emerging adults are identical. This particular specimen has unusually pale orange hindwings. This is a more normally coloured specimen. It's feeding on Caucasian crossword, a good butterfly plant that you can grow in your garden. Everything you've just seen was filmed right here in my back garden. This is the tiny area of nettles and other plants that I've left just for wildlife.